I hate when my cigarette burns unevenly. This is Ufo here at my channel. Peace to you. May God save Serbia and Syria. And I got an interesting comment on the video about race. I'm glad nobody took that in any strange way. I was just giving facts. Apparently, there's something called Great Zimbabwe, or maybe it's Zambia or something like that. But the problem is, the something of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe, but it was between the 13th and 16th centuries. This is long after the Arabs. We know the Roman legions had contact with the Berbers, but the Berbers pretty much stuck to their own culture, and this is one thing that might be controversial. The Berbers were of lighter skin, and then they eventually, when they mixed with people, they got the darker skin, but they were originally a lighter skinned people. More quote unquote Aryan features you can still tell in them today. I don't think they can be categorized as black Africans. But yeah, this kingdom apparently between the 13th and 16th centuries were settlements of the kingdom of Zimbabwe, later the kingdom of Butao, I guess. I don't know, I have to look into it. But somebody had wrote, the white race should preserve itself as much as possible. There's a problem in that, though, because white, well, if you mean Aryan, you're talking stretching from India to Ireland and all the Mediterranean peoples. Do you mean like Italians, Spaniards, and Portuguese, and some of the people in Latin America should stick together, or Mayans, like what you said, the white race? I mean, should a Nordic person breed with Central Italian or Spaniard, or Anglo-Saxon breed with Celt, or Slav with Spaniard? I mean, these are different groups. There's no unified white. I mean, what about the Syrians? I mean, the Turks obviously were nomadic people from Asia, but then again, most of what gets classified as really white is from Asia. I mean, the Huns, the Slavic peoples. I mean, it's just across the border, but it is Asia. And these people probably came from the people who get called Scythians. We know that the Huns, the Tatars, and the Mongols were all one group. They all came out of the same thing, and the Turks too. Now, Turks are lighter skin. They're like Europeans. There's also a blend with other people in there. The Persians. I mean, just look at pre-revolutionary Iran, or modern day Iran. Pre-revolutionary Iran. The reason I say that pre-1979 is because you can actually see, like, people wearing shorts, and so you can look at their body types and their facial features and everything, and they're not all covered up with beard and stuff like that. So should a Persian and a Slav mix, or is it okay for a Persian and an Italian? That's one thing I don't understand. I understand wanting to preserve communities and having, lineages or the original people. Like, again, when people say that they're, I had somebody tell me that they're half Italian, half Sicilian, and they could have not looked more Germanic. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and the facial features too, like the short, the like very like German nose, all small features, very German looking. And yeah, the Lombards and the Franks and the Visigoths and all these people settled, in northern Europe. But that was over 1,000 years ago. That was like 1,500 years ago. So what are you gonna know? Um, those people blended in. Yeah, there's now some blonde hair, blue eyed Italians, but they have Latin features because they came and they ruled. They weren't displacing populations. They were coming as raiding parties. They weren't uh, that had stayed. They weren't moving in their culture like the Latins displacing the Celts in Spain, or the Anglo-Saxons displacing the Celts, and the Celts got it rough in Britain, or the Franks displacing the Celts in Gaul. Gaul is actually strange because it moves from Iberian Peninsula to, or actually, what's modern day France or the Iberian Peninsula, like it, because the Gauls were Celts. They're, in modern terms, Irish people, right? Um, and it's funny, the Irish get recorded as Scots because there was no definition. Scotland was called Pickland, and Ireland was called Scotland. It's kind of funny if you read the old stuff. We're not going to cross over to, we have to go by water if we go to Scotland, but Pickland we can, and the Picts were obviously a group of Celts, and then you had the Britons, which were Celts, which don't really exist anymore. I guess they got pushed off into Wales. It's why it's very strange for modern English people to, like, Boudica, to be a fan of Boudica, or the French to see Vercingetorix as a great hero, or uh, for the modern Spanish to take pride in these ancient Celtic forts. It's like your ancestors didn't build those. It's like me taking pride in Cahokia. It's a great feat, but it's not. They're, I mean, I'm not even related to the enemies of those people, but it was the English and the French, and I don't have any of that blood in me that ran them off, and then I came in, or my people came in just hundreds of years. Well, actually, those people were gone. That civilization was gone by the time anybody had gotten there. I think its demise was like 1300, which is kind of sad because it would have really been nice to at least see the records of people coming in contact with us, and you would have had this great Mississippian culture, and you would have had the I don't know, maybe it would have sped up expansionism, but expansionism in North America was nothing like how it was in south of the Rio Grande. It was, well, that's a whole other story. But white race, if you mean the Nordic race, like the Nordic peoples, obviously you put Germans, Danes, Finns, Swedes, uh, Norway people. I don't know what the Norish. I don't know what they would be. Norwegian. Sorry. Um, the English, maybe, but there again, would you include the French? I mean, could you include Spanish and Italians and Greeks? What about Albanians? And then what do you do about the Slavs? Should the Slavs stick together? Should, it's okay for a Serbian to marry a Russian or a Ukrainian or a Pole, but and then again, Poland's kind of a mixed bag of Germanic people and Slavic. Well, it's overwhelmingly Slavic, but they've got some German in them because of the way the borders were shifted after two wars. This is are the Ukrainians a different group than the Russians? I mean, really, no, but they seem to feel, at least culturally, they're, well, even then, they came out of the same branches. It's like trying to distinguish between Italian and Spanish. Except with, at least with Italy and Spain, you have, two separate peninsulas. With France, yeah, Romance-speaking language, but not of Latin blood, in between the two. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. Then again, I don't know. Then again, you go back to the idea of pure races. Well, then what the hell are we talking about? Because to automatically assume that Celts were all the same, or that, I mean, because the Celts had stretched from Ireland to the settlement in Turkey, famously known as Galatia. The letter to the Galatians is a letter to Celtic people. Which again, why Afro-Israelism is just beyond stupid. They'd have to throw out the book. The Book of Celts would have to be a lie, right? Or well, that section probably name, the Book of Galatians, which is a letter that no scholar anywhere ever doubts. The Gnostics would probably, well, I don't even know if the Gnostics would doubt it, although I've known Gnostics who doubt the Book of Galatians was written by Paul. Or Marcion wrote it, or something like that. Oh yeah, it's a Marcionite work, or something says you've seen Christ displayed crucified. So, well, it says Christ depicted crucified, so it doesn't. Again, I believe in early icons, so that doesn't. I don't think those people actually saw Christ crucified, but depicted crucified, absolutely. I never made that connection until just now. There's actually a lot in the Bible which endorses iconography, especially in the New Testament. And I know that's a shock to the Protestants. But, yeah, I mean, you could say Aryans should only marry other Aryans, or something like that. But, I mean, I don't think any racial white supremacist would be too happy about that, of, an Irish guy taking a Desi wife, or, an Albanian marrying a Slav, or a Persian and an English person, an Italian and a Norwegian. It might get a little tricky. So again, I'd like clarification on that question. Again, I don't think the question itself is inherently like racist, meaning you're hating other races. If you're just saying let's try to preserve this, because there's indigenous people like the Mayans that don't consider themselves Mexicans, don't want their children marrying Mexicans, because the Mexicans are they're mestizos. They're a blend of Spanish, and some of them are 100% descended from Spain. And then you got pockets of like Arabs and Slavs in those countries. I mean, look at where my Syrian descent comes from. It's not directly Syrian. It's not Argentina, for God's sake. So yeah, I don't know. And then, I mean, does Argentina count as a white country? Does Chile? to the big cities of Colombia? Uh, what about huge swaths of Brazil? I mean, it's funny. I've known Brazilian families, parents, kids all look like their parents, but one brother would be categorized black by America. Um, a brother and a sister would be considered white, and one sister would be considered Hispanic or Latino looking, because the genes are so mixed that it's not like, oh, it was from different people. No, they all look like each other and they all look like their parents. Seeing them separately, people are like, what? Or like, do they have two different parents and the same eye? But no, they have features from both their mother and their father. And it's kind of, they think it's funny here in America it's kind of a joke to them, because one of the daughters has blonde hair, and then the Hispanic, the quote unquote Hispanic looking one, has green eyes, but very, very dark skin. And then one of the sons, I mean, it's really funny with the sons. One has very curly hair, very dark. The other one's just the features on him. You'd say, oh, what is he, like, half Irish, half Italian or something? Like, what, like a quarter Italian or something? You can all tell they're related, but it's so, I don't know. But then again, I'm not going to, with questions like this, I'm not going to approach you're a racist, blah, blah, blah. No. Again, if I'm going to say that nations have the right to self-determination, if people say, well, we should stick together, I find that as a different statement than we should kill all those other people or enslave all those people. When people start saying that, then it's, well, now you're getting into, tricky areas. Maybe I should make a part 2 of this, because I'll get some other thoughts on it, which would also complicate the matter. I don't know. Good topic to talk about, but this is just a question to the person. How is that going to work? Or what is the criteria actually? That should probably be the question. What about the gypsies? I mean, they came from India, the Romani. They're all over Europe, and they've got, I mean, now if you want to say we should expel them, not because of their race, but because their culture is detrimental to the host culture, because of, culturally, they're thieves. They probably admit it, thieves, beggars, and prostitutes. Because I don't think all cultures are equal. I think, all people are equal in the sight of God, but not cultures. I mean, the dervishes in the 150 years ago got wiped out, and they were kind of like the Taliban in their day. I guess you would consider that a genocide. I don't think it was a terrible thing that the Spanish stopped the Aztecs from committing human sacrifice, although later, it was actually, the atrocities were later committed by the mestizos, which is pretty gruesome what they did to the indigenous people who were not the Aztecs, like the Maya of the hills, who just basically get jacked up on peyote. And what the Mexican government today is doing to the indigenous people is horrific. I always speak about Israel, or what they're doing to the Palestinians, but I mean, kind of turns a blind eye when you have Mexicans murdering Native Americans, because Native Americans don't consider themselves Mexicans. I don't know how much Mexicans want to consider themselves Native Americans. They're from a mixed group, which they should take pride in. I mean, they speak Spanish. They're predominantly, I mean, it's a Catholic culture. No matter what religion, even if you're an atheist, you're pretty much immersed in Catholicism in it. So yeah, it's It would be an interesting topic to talk about. I don't know, maybe somebody has, if anybody wants to talk about this as a Skype camera, and anybody's on the other side, or if this person left a comment as Skype and a camera, we could record a conversation. I'd put that up on my channel. Alright, take it easy. The problem is, yeah, something of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe, but it was between the 13th and 16th centuries. This is long after the Arabs. We know the Roman legions had contact with the Berbers, but the Berbers pretty much stuck to their own culture, and this is one thing that might be controversial. The Berbers were of lighter skin, and then they eventually, when they mixed with people, they got the darker skin, but they were I hate when my cigarette burns unevenly. This is Ufos here at my channel. Peace to you, may God save Serbia and Syria. And I got an interesting comment on the video about race. I'm glad nobody took that in any strange way. I was just giving facts. Apparently there's something called Great Zimbabwe, or maybe it's Zambia or something like that. But as much as possible. There's a problem in that, though, because white, well, if you mean Aryan, you're talking stretching from India to Ireland and all the Mediterranean peoples. Do you mean like Italians, Spaniards, and Portuguese, and some of the people in Latin America should originally a lighter-skinned people, more quote-unquote Aryan features. You can still tell in them today. I don't think they can be categorized as black Africans. But yeah, this kingdom apparently between the 13th and 16th centuries were settlements of the kingdom of Zimbabwe, later the kingdom of Butao, I guess. I don't know, I have to look into it. But somebody had wrote, the white race should preserve itself, stick together, or Mayan, like, what you said, the white race. I mean, should a Nordic person breed with Central Italian or Spaniard, or Anglo-Saxon breed with Celt, or Slav with Spaniard? I mean, these are different groups. There's no unified white. I mean, what about the Syrians? I mean, the Turks obviously were nomadic people from Asia,